Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this Wednesday afternoon. And we've got a lot to talk about today. And I'm sorry for being a little bit late. I did get held up in a meeting by my own choice because I was so intrigued with TJ's panic meter list. I believe he does this, he goes live directly after my basketball podcast. I have no idea if he's going to be doing or going over his panic meter list today, but essentially that's sort of where he takes all of the NFL teams that have lost over this past weekend, and he continues to, he gives his opinions on which of the teams need to press the panic button and sort of start worrying about their expectations for this season. It's a really fun list and it's very interesting. So I recommend tuning into his sports podcast if you guys are interested in football and his opinions on the teams and their standings and all of that stuff. So aside from that, you guys didn't come here for football. You guys came here for basketball. So we have in the first segment, we have an injury update for Paul George from the 76ers. So we're going to talk about that in the first segment, and whether it's a bad injury, whether it's a good injury, whether he's going to be sidelined for a while. And then in the second segment, we're going to talk about the Lakers, whether or not they're ready for this coming season and what the expectations are for the Lakers in this coming season. My expectations, at least. And then in the third segment, we're going to talk about Victor Wembanyama and what he prioritizes over winning an NBA championship, which is something that you rarely see NBA caliber players or players in the NBA that aspire to do anything more than just win an NBA championship. So he has his sights set a little bit higher. We're going to talk about that in the third segment. And then in the fourth segment, we're going to talk about a problem with the Milwaukee Bucks that I think is going to be a problem later on. And it's not just a head coaching problem that they've got. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk about that in the fourth segment. And then we have a special fifth segment at the end of the fourth segment. So be sure to stay tuned for that if any of you guys are interested. So before I start with this first segment, I'd like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show. Whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, something you've been dying to share, we're all ears. If you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. If Super Chat's not really your thing, that's totally fine. You can always use the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment, gsmcspodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. Either or, it really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. So let's go right ahead and talk about the Paul George injury. So as you guys, if you guys tuned into the last segment, which I talked about it in the first segment, at the last podcast, so you can check the video out on YouTube, or if you guys are on the audio side, you can listen to the first segment of the audio podcast. So I talked about how Paul George, he seemed to have suffered what was a hyperextended knee injury. And I can't show the image because, it's a very, just looking at it, it looks like it hurts, right? So I really don't want, if I think it hurts and I'm looking at it, I can only imagine what you guys think we're looking at it. Obviously, those on the audio side won't be able to see that. But I said that this could be like a huge trickle-down effect that would go on throughout the rest of the season, and that maybe Paul George won't remain healthy throughout the entirety of the season because he already got injured in a preseason game. And I've said that the starters, they should not even play in the preseason. I'm still going to stand by that regardless of what's happening. They should not play in a preseason game. The games just don't matter nearly as much as the regular season does. And I'll argue sitting out in a regular season game. I don't really agree with it all too much, depending on which game it is. But sitting out in a preseason game, I think every starter should be sitting out in a preseason game. But that's just me. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. So we do have some positive news regarding Paul George's hyperextended knee. So obviously he exited the game early the other day against Atlanta on Monday after suffering what was thought to be a hyperextended knee injury, as you guys know. Though the injury, it didn't look all that great, things appear to be all right for the 76ers, according to this article. The 76ers, they shared an update Tuesday saying that an MRI revealed there was no structural damage on Paul George's knee, meaning that his knee is all right. So he's only suffered a bone bruise and is expected to be out at least just 1 week. So all of you 76ers fans, you can like stop panicking. Everything is fine. Like he should be good to go for the season. And I mean, really, I feel like the Sixers, they might need to restrict his minutes, maybe just a little bit, maybe just a little bit, just to make sure that he doesn't get injured again. And I mean, he's 34 years old, and he missed a total of 127 games across the last 5 seasons with the Clippers. So injuries they're nothing really new for Paul George, especially this stage of his career now. And the 76ers, they knew that injuries were going to be a risk when they did sign Paul George in this offseason, but obviously, they still took that chance. And now it's up to Paul George and the 76ers to be able to limit those injuries as much as they possibly can. And even with these injuries, he still averaged 22 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists, and 1.5 steals per game in 74 games last season. And he's beginning in his 4-year, $211 million contract with the 76ers. So, again, this injury isn't all that big of a deal. Like, he should be fine and should be ready to play going into the NBA season. Again, that wasn't my main concern. I wasn't concerned with whether or not this Paul George was going to not play throughout the entirety of the season with this injury. That wasn't my concern. My main concern is how the 76ers are going to manage this injury throughout the rest of the season. Because, again, these 76ers, Joel Embiid in particular, they suffer from a lot of injuries come playoff time. And even last season, Joel Embiid got injured before the postseason even started. And then he was injured, of course, during the postseason. It always happens. So this could be the exact same scenario for Paul George, and that's something that the 76ers are going to try their best to avoid. Like, if there's any player that they should try to minimize injuries, it should be Paul George over Joel Embiid. Because the way I see it, it seems that Joel Embiid is going to get injured regardless. His style of play does not complement his style, actually, excuse me, let me rephrase that. His style of play only complements those injuries. And let me explain what I mean by that. Like, every single time this man goes to the basket, he always flails his body around, and then he falls to the floor. Falling to the floor while having that much mass means that you're going to fall harder. And constantly doing that in every single game, it means that you're going to be a little bit more, you're going to tend to suffering a lot more injuries than you are if you were to not do that, whether you were to go up strong. So every single time he does this, it's only just increasing the chances of getting injured. Because, imagine if you're an injury-prone kind of guy, right? And you just frequently, almost every single time, just fall to the ground. Obviously, the chances of you getting injured are going to be much higher. Not to mention how awkwardly he tends to land sometimes in order to exaggerate the contact and actually fall to the ground. It's not something that should be, it's not basketball. There's no other way to say it aside from it just not being basketball. And this carries over into the postseason where he ends up getting injured in the postseason. It happens all the time. And with that in mind, this is why I think that Paul George should be a little bit more of a priority in trying to keep healthy as opposed to Joel Embiid, especially in regards to Paul George's age. Because Joel Embiid, he is going to get older, yes, but he's not as old right now as Paul George. And considering how Paul George did lead the Clippers to a Western Conference Finals matchup, the first time that that's ever happened in the history of the Clippers franchise, without Kawhi Leonard, their best player, I think Paul George is going to be the X factor in the postseason for the 76ers. So they have to keep Paul George healthy by any means necessary. This includes not playing him in preseason games, but for some reason they're just like, oh yeah, let's throw him in a preseason game. What's going to happen? And with this, with this thought process, I totally understand, you want your best players to get warmed up. You want your best players to start playing and start getting ready for the season. But at what cost? You're risking him getting injured early, which ended up happening. Luckily for them, it wasn't a huge injury. It's only going to sideline him for a week. But what if it was a huge injury? Like, what would the 76ers do then? It's a huge risk that I don't think they have the luxury to afford in making now. And, having two of the best players, yeah, sure, we'll say two of the best players. I do think Tyrese Maxey is the second option, though, for any of you guys who are wondering. Having two of your best players constantly suffer injuries is something that cannot happen. You have to prioritize on which player you want to keep healthy. I think it should be Paul George over Joel Embiid, mainly because Joel Embiid is just going to get injured anyway. But with Paul George, you can try and sort of mitigate just the injuries and the tendency of him getting injured throughout most of the regular season. Obviously, I think he should play, but later down the road, he played 74 games, so he can totally play 70 games. But later down the road, maybe you need to relax on the amount of minutes that he's allowed to play in a game and try to sort of prevent him from being injured. And that's also something that Paul George should keep in mind when he's playing the game as well. Obviously, as an NBA player, you'd want to go hard in every single game that you play in. You want to play every single game as if it matters. But you also want to keep yourself healthy. So maybe ease up a little bit on the minutes depending on the game and depending on the scenario, obviously, but try and ease up on some of these minutes for Paul George in order to ensure that he's healthy for the postseason. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of that, because on the other hand, I genuinely don't think he should be playing at all in the preseason, but that's just me. Again, I know some people, they might think differently about that, but let me know in the comments what you guys think. So that's all that I have for the Paul George injury update. Again, it's just a bone bruise. He'll be out for about a week, and he should be fine for the regular season, so no harm, no foul. Everything should be good. And with that out of the way, we can go ahead and go into the second segment. But first, I'm going to go into an ad break. And in the second segment, we're going to talk about the Lakers and whether or not I think they are ready for the regular season. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be talking about the Lakers, whether or not I feel like they're ready going into this season, if they have some things that I feel like need to be improved, because JJ Redick thinks that they're ready. So, excuse me. But before I go into this segment, I'd like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, or just something that you've been dying to share. We are all ears, and if you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. If Super Chat's not really your thing, then that's totally fine. You can always use the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment, gsmcpodcast.net. And you can send in your comments and or donations that way. The link is just appearing below the ticker, as you guys can see. So either or really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the Lakers, whether or not they're ready for this season, and my overall thoughts on their preseason matchup against the Warriors. So JJ Redick, the other day before matching up against the Warriors, he came off of his first preseason win against the hiccups, against the Milwaukee Bucks. And, they came back they went on a 20-0 run in the fourth quarter, which is obviously a very good sign and a very bad sign for Darvin Ham and Doc Rivers and the incredible coaching duo that they are. And so, obviously, there would be a bit of extra motivation going into this matchup against the Warriors, and any sort of matchup going up against the Warriors, the narratives behind that, LeBron against Steph, LeBron's team against Steph Curry's team, which team is going to be better, and of course, Golden State ended up being better by default just because they're Golden State and because LeBron wasn't playing that well in this game. And spoiler alert, neither was his son. Both of them played pretty poorly. I believe they combined for 8 points. LeBron had 6. Bronny had 2. So, yay, Bronny had points up on the board for the first time in forever, it feels like. But, yeah, aside from that, they ended up losing 111-97. Anthony Davis, he was the highlight of the night for the Los Angeles Lakers. He ended the game with 24 points and 12 rebounds, and he shot a very impressive 10 for 14 from the field. However, the rest of the team really struggled. Really struggled. Dalton Connect ended up going 5 for 13 from 3, just pitiful, 6 for 15 from the field, but he did end with 19 points, so that's something. The three-point shooting is a little bit suspect, but that can easily be worked on. Roy Hachimura, 5 for 14, 1 of 5 from 3, ended with 15 points. Austin Reeves, 3 for 8, 2 for 6 from 3. LeBron James, 2 for 10. Actually, wait, no, excuse me, that was D'Angelo Russell who went 2 for 10 and went 2 for 6 from 3. And then LeBron James went 3 for 9, only accounting for 6 points, as I mentioned previously. And Bronny James went 1 for 5, 0 for 3 from 3. And other players on the roster, Max Christie, 0 for 3, Gabe Vincent, 0 for 5, and Jalen Hood-Schifino, 0 for 6. So, yeah, this team is only going to go as far as their three-point shooting can take them. They shot 27% from 3 in this following game. So it's really bad. If you're going to be a three-point shooting team. JJ Redick has stated previously that he is going to try and implement a system that encourages a little bit more three-pointers because that's usually how you're supposed to run an offense now in these days. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just half the battle is going to be making those three-pointers. We saw this problem with the Houston Rockets. Thankfully, they had James Harden. James Harden was a freak show back in the day and was able to average 38 points per game and facilitate good enough to allow the three-point shooters to be great on the roster and give them open looks. This same concept is going to be applied here. A little bit different, obviously, because JJ Redick has a little bit more of a different scheme and plan for these Lakers, but they're only going to go as far as their three-point shooting. And if 27% is their best at three-point shooting, then this is not going to be ideal. The total field goal was 11 for 40. They took 43 pointers and only made 11 of them, which is terrible. Just terrible. They also shot only 35% from the field. But despite this, JJ Redick said that he was pleased with the shots that the team was able to generate. As he said, quote, "I was highly encouraged with the shots we got. Highly encouraged. It was when we didn't trust our offense and got a little stagnant, ball stuck. Ball stuck, that's what he says. That was the beginning of that quarter. We had 19 points, I think, in the third, and AD had 8 on 4 straight possessions in iso ball, which I called those plays because AD hadn't touched it. That was just, we didn't have good offense that quarter. That happens sometimes, and it's a growth opportunity, a learning lesson for our group. Our execution, ball movement, passing, all of that stuff, and I'll rewatch it, but I thought it was great in the first half. We just didn't make shots. And that's a human nature. It's a tendency of groups of players. I've lived it. A lot of these things I've lived. So I have some experience in some perspective on it. You stop trusting it, and you start thinking, I got to get myself going. I got to get myself going. That's not how we want to play, and that's okay. It happens. We'll get better. I was very pleased with the type of shots we generated, and look, given their size and given Draymond as a savvy player, this was not going to be a heavy rim game for us. It just wasn't. So again, I just thought the start of that third, I didn't like how we played. So he seemed to be more concerned of the shots that they were generating as opposed to the fact that they weren't making shots, which in a preseason game, that makes total sense. Like, you get a better feel. Like, as long as you take high percentage shots, really, that's a good thing. Like, that's really a good thing. Now the half the battle is just making those high percentage shots. And he believes that that's something that they're going to develop as the season, unfolds. And I do like that thought process, and I do agree with, like, okay, you're getting the shots that you need. Now you just have to make it. Like, that's a pretty solid start. However, I am a little bit afraid of what happens if they continue with this mindset. I mean, imagine if it's a very, very important playoff game and you see that your team is struggling in hitting shots. What would be your game plan then? Like, because, yes, you do have to get your players going, and you do have to, like, I understand trusting the three-point shot, but there's also the saying, you live and you die by the three. So trusting in it a little bit too much could also be a bad thing for the Lakers. And I'm very curious to see what exactly would be the play calling and what would be the next move if the three-point shot isn't really falling. What would be the shot that the Lakers try to look for next? And what would be the offensive system that the Lakers would try to encourage players to sort of get it going, I guess you could say. Because your three-point shooters and shooters in general, they're going to feel a lot better when they're making shots. It's just a confidence thing. That's always going to happen. But if they're not making shots, or if their teammate isn't making shots, then it could hinder their confidence and prevent them from either wanting to shoot the three ball more or prevent them from even taking a three-pointer. And it's sort of like, it's a very difficult thing to manage, and it's a very difficult thing to trust, in my opinion. Like, I have no problem with trusting the three, but trusting it too much could be your downfall. And you sort of need, like, a good enough backup plan. This is sort of, in my opinion, I think the reason why they're going to use, or how they're going to use Anthony Davis and LeBron James. Whenever the team isn't able to get going, I think they're going to try and rely on Anthony Davis and LeBron James to get the team going and try to get some sort of momentum if the three-point shot isn't falling. But that's LeBron and Anthony Davis. What about the rest of the team? I'm very curious to see how this goes. But he does think that they're ready, and that half the battle is just going to be making the three-pointers. And that comes with practice. So a little bit too at ease, I think JJ Redick is being. Just a little bit. Again, I totally understand, like, the thought process, and I actually have no problem with this thought process. You're able to generate open shots. That is a very good thing. And it's just now the half the battle, and I know I keep repeating myself, but that is very important. You got to make those three-pointers. And if your team can't make those three-pointers, I'm very curious what would be the next step. Like, at least with the Bucks, if they're not making three-pointers, then they have Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's just a force of nature. And while I do think that, yes, LeBron is a force of nature as well, he is still pushing 40 years old. So I don't really know if that's going to be a reliable thing to count on as the season progresses. Again, I know it sounds like I'm doubting LeBron, but I genuinely have these kinds of concerns, especially if what would happen if LeBron or Anthony Davis gets injured? Because God forbid that happens, but that is still a very huge possibility, especially regarding Anthony Davis. Considering how Anthony Davis is now playing in these preseason games, and he played in the Olympics, he basically continued to play basketball throughout the entirety of the year. And again, injuries are going to be a very dangerous thing, and something that I feel like the Lakers should be wary about. But he did say, quote, "We're ready. Just continue to build trust with what we're doing." Again, I'll rewatch it, but our off-ball roles were very clear. They're very clear. We practiced that. We worked on it again today. When we made stuff up, they hurt us. So you just have to trust it. I thought our guys, when they were in lock and trail and chasing and following our off-ball screen rules, they did a really nice job. And when they didn't, they hurt us. They got layups, they got open threes, and that's the biggest thing. There's some stuff we'll continue to clean up, some stuff in transition defense that wasn't particularly good. You look at that, and then you look at us really just making mistakes in our off-ball rules. That's how they got 52 points in the paint. And that's what this team does. That's what the Warriors do. You have to trust what you're doing defensively. With the season opener against Minnesota in less than a week, Redick will need to use these final 2 preseason games to ensure that they are indeed ready. And that's all that I really have on this second segment. So, are they ready? Not entirely sure. I think it's a little bit more complicated than just we're getting the open shots, we're good. Like, I feel like it should be like, okay, now we have to start hitting the open shots. And I understand that comes in time, but I feel like there should be some concern in case you don't make some of these open shots. But that's just me. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, whether you guys think the Lakers are just going to be the good old Lakers and constantly collapse like as usual in the midseason. Then they rejuvenate after All-Star break only to get wrecked by the Denver Nuggets. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. But aside from that, we're going to go ahead and go into the third segment where I talk about Victor Wembanyama and his priorities of winning something more than an NBA championship. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be talking about Victor Wembanyama and exactly what he prioritizes. And yes, you are reading the title of the you're reading the title and the ticker of the podcast correct. He does prioritize something aside from winning an NBA championship, which is a little bit uncharacteristic. You know, a lot of NBA players, they prioritize themselves more than anything in winning an NBA title. And when you think about it, like when you really think about it, winning an NBA championship might be a little bit more difficult than winning an Olympic title in terms of basketball. Now, hear me out and I'll explain exactly why. The NBA now, with how it's constructed and how it's bringing in multiple different players from all across the world, they only draft the best of the best of the best caliber basketball players, unless you're Bronny. But aside from that, most of the time, the championship contending teams, they're going to be full of the best kind of basketball players in the world. I mean, we see Nikola Jokic, one of the best in the world. Giannis Antetokounmpo, one of the best in the world. So naturally, all of the best basketball players ever are going to be playing in the NBA. And players, international players, you notice how over in the Olympics, there are certain international players who aren't in the NBA. They aren't in the NBA for a very good reason, because they're simply just not good enough to compete at that level. And obviously, you know, the rules in FIBA are much more different than the rules in the NBA. You can indeed make that argument, yes. But still, the NBA is composed of the world's best basketball players. And if you can win a championship against the best basketball players, going up against the best basketball players in the entire world, then that's also a big reason why the NBA, whenever they crown a champion, they call them world champions, because let's face it, those are the best players in basketball, period. And you wouldn't be, like, you don't really see many foreign teams or many foreign players even being able to compete in the NBA because they're just, at least according to the NBA and the scouts, they aren't good enough to make that league. So the biggest, like, I guess you could say the biggest road to climb and, like, the biggest mountain to climb is an NBA championship as opposed to winning something like the Olympics. And that's my opinion. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of that opinion. But the Victor Wembanyama, he has his eyes set on winning a gold medal. And as he enters into his second NBA season, he's preparing for a follow-up on one of the most impressive rookie seasons that we've ever seen in the history of rookie seasons. He won Rookie of the Year unanimously. He was the first player to ever win Rookie of the Year unanimously since Karl Anthony Towns after his 2015 and 2016 season, And he also finished second in Defensive Player of the Year voting and was the NBA blocks leader by a wide margin. And many knew that he would be an impressive player, but nobody expected him to be this good this early. And even so, like, he managed to exceed everyone's expectations almost immediately. And his impressive run, it then carried over into the Olympics during the 2024 Paris Olympics, right? We all saw the French go up all the way to the finals where they inevitably lost to the United States. And again, you know, losing to Team USA, that's just a common thing in the Olympics. USA. Despite putting up 26 points, however, along with 7 rebounds and 2 assists and a steal, he could not lead his team over that hump and had to settle for the silver medal. And as is the case with many athletes, winning a gold medal in their respective sport is a monumental and important achievement. You can make the argument that national teams and, like, teams that are outside of the United States, especially in basketball, they really, really, really want to win a gold medal, particularly in basketball, because the United States, gold medal in basketball is the United States' battle to lose. Almost every single year, the United States are always going to be the favorites in winning the gold medal for basketball. It happens every single time, aside from 2004 when they completely disappointed absolutely everyone. There were a lot of problems with that team, more so than just the roster construction. If you guys want me to do a segment on the 2004 Olympic team, I could totally do that. But a lot of foreign countries, they really, really value winning a gold medal because that's just what it is. It's a huge honor for your country. You're going up against the best athletes in the world in your respective sport, and you're going to be, if you win a gold medal, you're going to be recognized as the best of the best. I mean, Michael Phelps is considered the best of the best because of the amount of gold medals that he has. Same with so many other athletes in every single respective sport. I mean, Simone Biles, she's already considered a GOAT because of her Olympic gold medals that she already has. And being such a young athlete, it only increases just how fantastic the award actually is, like, for that athlete, of course. And in a recent interview with Sports Illustrated, Victor Wembanyama revealed that he would rather win an Olympic gold medal than an NBA championship. And it's a little bit uncharacteristic to see that from an NBA player. Most of the time you see NBA players, they want to win an NBA championship over a gold medal. But I do think it's a little bit different when you're a foreign country. Like, when you're from a foreign country, I think most of the time those foreign players would much rather win a gold medal than win an American championship, because that's essentially what the NBA is. It is an American championship, but they do call themselves world champions for reasons that I've already explained. But it would make sense that he would want to win a gold medal for France, because beating the United States in basketball is very, very difficult. It is something that's very difficult. And if he wins a gold medal, he essentially would have done the impossible, because most likely he's going to have to face off against the United States in the Olympics once again with his national team, France. But if he's able to somehow beat the United States, that might be more of an achievement for him than winning an NBA championship. And I mean, if he does that, he's immediately going to be in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. Like, just beating an Olympic, like, just beating the United States in basketball is it's a very rare thing to do. It almost never happens. Like, and if it does happen, it's a very, very big deal. Like, a very big deal. And so, evaluating the next chance that he can win a gold medal. So the Olympics are going to take place, obviously, as you guys know, they take place every 4 years. And that means Victor is going to have another opportunity to do this in 2028. Given that he and Team France earned silver medals this time around, there's still a legitimate chance that they can win gold next time. By that point, Victor Wembanyama should be even better than what he is now. And, you know, having 5 years of NBA experience under his belt. And up to that point, like, that would be, like, he would have the experience. Now the other question is, will he have a good enough roster to be able to do so, right? Additionally, he's also going to be 24 years old and potentially just entering his peak as a basketball player, which is something that's very scary because, I mean, he's already the unanimous Rookie of the Year. He's already been the leader in blocks in the NBA, and we still haven't seen him at his best, which is scary to think about. And, you know, considering how he'll be 24 years old when the next Olympics comes around, imagine just the amount of experience he's going to garner from playing in the NBA, alongside with playing with Chris Paul, who is a fantastic point guard. And I mean, it's going to be Lob City 2.0 with the Spurs over there. And furthermore, Team USA is probably going to be the one team that's going to stand in France's way in the next Summer Olympics when they take place. I believe the Summer Olympics, they're going to take place in Los Angeles for the next time around. Forgive me if I mess that up. I have no idea when those next Olympics are going to take place. But that would also mean that now the United States are going to have home field advantage in these Olympic matchups. And, you know, the French, they had home field advantage in the last Olympic matchup when they were in the gold medal game. And the United States was able to whoop them. So now that the United States have home field advantage, I don't know if that's going to play into effect. It probably will, knowing us United States fans and knowing the amount of animosity that's going to be around Victor and around him against going up the United States. But I will say I am terrified of Victor in the Olympics. But that's just me. Like, thank the Lord that we had LeBron, Steph, and Kevin Durant. But now that, you know, going into the future and going into 2028, it's expected that LeBron, Steph, and Kevin Durant, they aren't going to be on Team USA anymore, which is a very, very big problem. Those three guys, I mean, well, specifically LeBron and Kevin Durant, those are some of the best United States basketball athletes we've ever seen. And, I mean, you know, Steph Curry, he won his first gold medal, and he didn't play well throughout the entire Olympics, but in the final two games when it really mattered, he did show up. Additionally, it's unknown whether, like, what to expect from future stars like Anthony Davis, Jason Tatum, and Devin Booker, and what exactly they can do for Team USA's leadership. Regardless, a lot can happen within the 4 years. And it is fair to say that Wembanyama and Team France are legitimate threats to end United States' gold medal streak. So, again, if he wins a gold medal, it would be a huge achievement for him, and it would be a huge achievement for any national team that can win the gold medal in basketball. But the future right now with Wembanyama, it's looking very bright. As I mentioned, he already won Rookie of the Year, and we still haven't seen him at the best of his ability. And now he actually has a very solid point guard that can actually get him the ball. However, Wembanyama's individual success, which was fantastic, it did not translate to winning basketball immediately. And last season, the Spurs, they finished 22-60 for the second straight season. Furthermore, they finished with the second worst record in the Western Conference. But things could be looking up for this team. As I mentioned, they did add Chris Paul. They also drafted Stephon Castle, and they also acquired Harrison Barnes. So maybe this could be a bounce-back year for the San Antonio Spurs. Really, the reason why the Spurs weren't all that successful last season was because, in my opinion, the teammates that Victor had, they just were not giving him the ball. Like, I genuinely could not believe it. There would be instances where Victor was wide open in the paint, but Jeremy Sochan was like, nope, I'm going to do a tween. I'm going to shoot the mid-range or something like that. It was just, what are you doing? Like, he's 7'4". Just throw the ball up there, and Victor's going to be able to grab it and dunk it home. Like, Chris Paul realizes this. We already saw that in a preseason game. It's like, why couldn't these guys do that last season? It seems something that's so simple that even I could do it if I step on a court. Granted, I'm probably going to get, the pass is probably going to get sent just because I'm so short and everyone else is so much taller. But really the idea is just, give the ball to Victor in the paint. It's really like, it's not all that difficult. And I feel like that, not only that, Chris Paul's mentorship is going to be very helpful for Stephon Castle and being able to develop into a great point guard as the season, or as his seasons and his experience goes on. So we have to see, again, anything can happen. But Victor Wembanyama, he has his eyes set on a gold medal. So that's all that I really have to say on this segment. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. But now we're going to go right ahead and go into the fourth segment, which is talking about the Milwaukee Bucks and how they might have a problem going into this season. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned if you guys are interested.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we're going to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks and some potential flaws that they might be happening going into this season, as well as further beyond in this season. Now, if you guys tune into this podcast regularly, then you guys would know that my opinions on Doc Rivers and Darvin Ham as coaches are just very, very poor. So I'm not going to focus on those issues right now. I'm going to focus on some other issues regarding their roster as opposed to regarding their coaching problems. So, as we know, over the summer, Milwaukee Bucks, alongside with the Lakers, they were rather quiet in the offseason. So, they only acquired Taurean Prince, Gary Trent Jr., and Dylan Wright, and the only additions that they really made were Doc Rivers as the coach. And, Darvin Ham is an assistant coach, and those few players. Those were there were very few moves that the Milwaukee Bucks made. And the front office is banking on the team's core to sort of be able to bounce back after a relatively difficult season. Now, I will say that I don't really see this as a bad thing. Now, while Damian Lillard, he didn't really play all that well last season, in case any of you guys forgot, I did a segment on this before, but Damian Lillard, he actually told Doc that he was not in proper shape for this season. And why wasn't he in proper shape, you might ask? It was because he knew he was going to get traded from Portland in the offseason. Like 2 off seasons ago, just so you guys could remember. He knew he was going to get traded, and as a result, he didn't want to work out in fear of possibly getting injured. Yes, that does happen. In fact, I had a football teammate who he ended up getting injured while lifting weights, and he was out for the season. It was really bad. But again, those kind of issues he wanted to avoid to ensure that he would get traded from Portland. And that was why Damian Lillard wasn't in shape. So I expect a much different look at Damian Lillard this season. I do expect him to be in shape, and I do expect him to be ready to play a good basketball for this coming season, alongside with Giannis Antetokounmpo. And there's obviously still no escaping Milwaukee Bucks, and unless injuries succumb to them, I will say that. They've been eliminated in the first round of the postseason the last 2 seasons, in regards to injuries. And adding Damian Lillard last summer didn't really do much to alter that mindset and to alter them not being injured, right? So as we enter into the 2024 and 2025 season, the Bucks, they must accept some of their biggest flaws in the roster, and that is the fact that these players aren't getting any younger. Brook Lopez is 36 years old, and he's clearly starting to show some signs of decline. Not to mention Chris Middleton also being 33 years old. And now that he's been degraded to the third option, he was fantastic in the postseason, by the way, I will say that, but he did have some injury problems as well. And it's really those injuries for Chris Middleton, it seemed to sort of zap the quick first step that he used to have. And even Damian Lillard, while I did say I do think he's going to be in shape for this season, he is 34 years old and is on the wrong side of his prime playing years. This is what happens when you waste your time in Portland. But, that's another issue that he had, and that's something else. I don't even know why he was playing for Portland for all those years. But aside from that, when healthy, however, the Bucks, they are a championship contending team. That's also half the battle, though. They have to be healthy. Giannis and Lillard, they ensure that they must be taken seriously, especially during the regular season. They are a very solid pick-and-roll tandem, and there aren't many better offensive two-man games in the NBA aside from these two. Giannis and Lillard can't win a championship on their own, however. Milwaukee, they did add, perimeter threats like Trent Jr., while Prince can provide some two-way production for their team. But they must get some high-level production from Lopez, and, given the fact that he's so old, it's not entirely guaranteed. Middleton is also another player that they need to get solid production out of, but again, age is a problem. And, they need that if the roster has any sort of hopes of succeeding in this season. So, Lopez has been the bedrock of the team's defensive structure alongside with Giannis Antetokounmpo, and at the same time, Middleton has been the release valve that punishes teams when they collapse on Giannis's drive. And both players, they're very, very integral to the championship run. You can't beat the aging process, however, unless you're LeBron James. And all you can do is adjust and try to adapt. So if the Bucks have another early postseason exit, the front office might have to look to try and rebuilding the roster, and while still creating a competent enough team to compete in the postseason with Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard as, partners on the roster. That's really going to be the issue for this team, the fact that they aren't getting any younger. And not only that, also being sure to, be able to stay healthy throughout the postseason. Because I am fully confident that if the Bucks were healthy, they would have eliminated the Pacers easily. If the Knicks were healthy, they would have eliminated the Pacers easily. No question about it, in my opinion. The Bucks surprisingly ended up winning 2 games against the Pacers in that series, and the Pacers made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. And they won those 2 games when they weren't even expected to win those 2 games. They won it with Damian Lillard in there, and then they won it with Chris Middleton without Dame or Giannis. So the roster is good. The roster is definitely solid enough to make it far into the postseason. Now, half the battle is just doing it and also being able to stay healthy while you're doing it. And I feel like this should have been an easy win for the Bucks in the playoffs if Giannis was healthy. Granted, I do understand that the Pacers, they were dominating the Bucks throughout a majority of the regular season. I believe the Bucks' record against them was 1-4, counting play-in tournament, not play-in tournament, excuse me, in-season tournament. I'm mistaken the two sometimes. It's a new thing, so forgive me. But at the end of the day, playoffs are a completely different story than the regular season. And teams tend to take things a lot more seriously when they go into the postseason, especially Giannis Antetokounmpo. Goodness me. Giannis, fantastic postseason performer. I don't care what anyone says about him missing his free throws. His game is so simple. He just runs and dunk. It doesn't matter. It works. It gives them 32 points per game on 60% efficiency. You guys are just hating if you don't like Giannis's game. It's that simple. If you could score 32 points just by running to the basket and dunking the ball, I guarantee you guys would do that exact same thing. we need to stop with this Giannis can only run and dunk thing, because clearly it's more to that than just running and dunking. There's so many players that could run and dunk, but they don't do it nearly as well as Giannis. They don't average 32 like Giannis. They don't do this. They don't do that like Giannis. It's just, stop it. Stop with the hate. Giannis is arguably the second best player in the entire NBA. And when you have a talent like that paired up with Damian Lillard, now the half the battle is just staying healthy and also having a very solid supporting cast in case Dame or Giannis end up not playing well, because they're still human, which is something that I feel like a lot of people forget, that humans can mess up, and that's okay. That's what makes us who we are. But that's really all that I have for this segment. Again, this problem with the Bucks, and in conclusion, they have to worry about age, and they have to worry about the possibility of creating a new roster for Dame and Giannis Antetokounmpo to continue being a competing and a championship level team, because the East is only getting all that more competitive. The Boston Celtics, the 76ers, and the New York Knicks, combined with the possibility that the Cavs or the Orlando Magic could end up increasing in their production. Like, the East is starting to get a little bit more competitive. They have to try and remain to be the top dogs in the Eastern Conference. And while I do think that the coaching is going to hinder that just a little bit, I don't know why they fired their previous coach after winning all that much, but that's besides the point. And those are really the only problems that I got with the Bucks. So aside from that, we're going to go ahead and go into the fifth segment, where I do my preseason recap of all the games that went down the other day. So I'll be right back after this short break. If you guys are interested, be sure to stay tuned. And we are back with the fifth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fifth segment, we are going to be doing our preseason recap, just a recap of all of the scores and what happened over the preseason. And no fights broke out in Madison Square Garden this time, so fantastic. And while we're on the topic of Madison Square Garden, the Knicks ended up beating the Charlotte Hornets 111-105 in this preseason matchup. And Precious Achiuwa, I completely messed up. Precious Achiuwa, forgive me if I messed up that last name again, ended with 20 points along with 16 rebounds. None of the starters for the Knicks played in this game. Fantastic, absolutely great. I don't know why Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson were playing in these games, but that's besides the point. They're not playing in this one, and that's totally great, especially considering how they got this much production out of Precious. I mean, 16 boards along with 20 points, and not to mention Jericho Sims, he ended with 7 points, but also ended with 10 rebounds, which is fantastic. A great production coming in from both of those players in terms of acquiring boards and, in terms of actually producing more than just points, which has been the identity for the Knicks. They do a lot more than just produce points. They're a very gritty and hard-nosed team that really fights for offensive rebounds and fights for second chance points, something that we don't see many teams really do. Now we see teams, whenever they take a shot, they try to run back and play defense, and that's not a bad thing necessarily, but getting those second chance points is a very underrated task. It's something that Josh Hart has been fantastic at, and the production from both of these guys was fantastic. Miles McBride also played really well, 18 points, 5 assists. Cameron Payne also played really well, 16 points and 8 assists. Not to mention the production coming off the bench. Pacomi Dadiet, forgive me if I messed up that last name, he produced 16 points coming off of the bench. And Tyler Kolek, surprisingly, ended up getting 7 points, but listen to this, 8 rebounds and 9 assists. He's a point guard, by the way. And I'm just going to go ahead and try and find his height, because right now the bio is it's taking forever to load. He's 6'1", and he was able to get 8 rebounds. That's surprising. That's very impressive, I will say. And overall, just a solid game coming in from the Knicks. Now, for the Hornets, Brandon Miller has been pretty solid. 26 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. LaMelo Ball ended with 14 points, 7 assists, and 2 rebounds. And off the bench, Trey Mann ended with 16 points, 5 assists, and 4 rebounds. And LaMelo Ball, he didn't really shoot all that efficiently, 5 for 17 from the field, 4 for 11 from 3. The three-point percentage is pretty solid, I will say, but the field goal percentage is less than ideal. But that's really all that I have to say about that. Their field goal shooting wasn't all that great. The big reason why they ended up losing was because they shot 38% from the field, compared to the Knicks shooting 43% on the exact same amount of shots. So, yeah. As I mentioned before, the Lakers, they ended up losing to the Warriors 111-97. And as I said before, Anthony Davis was the highlight of the entire game. Now, for the Golden State Warriors, Moses Moody ended up with 21 points in 19 minutes, which is very, very good. And Draymond Green ended with a double-double, 10 points and 10 rebounds, with 0 punch teammates in the face. And Trace Jackson Davis ended with 2 points, not all that impressive, but he did cap off 10 rebounds as well. Steph Curry played, and he got 16 points, was 6 for 18 from the field and 3 for 11 from 3. That's just Steph. I mean, I don't even know what to say, but we know that we're afraid of Steph Curry from beyond the arc, so not really much that needs to be said. The Raptors ended up handing the Celtics their first loss in the preseason. They won 119-118. Grady Dick ended the game with 27 points and 6 rebounds. Davion Mitchell ended with 9 points and 10 assists. And Scotty Barnes ended with 26 points, 10 assists, and 9 rebounds in 30 minutes played. Again, if you guys are looking for a very underrated fantasy pick Scotty Barnes. He's most likely going to be available a little bit later on in the draft because nobody is going to know who Scotty Barnes is. I guarantee you Scotty Barnes will not fail you in your fantasy team. He was fantastic when he was on my fantasy. He will not fail you. Just for any of you guys that play fantasy basketball. Jacob Poeltl ended with 15 points and 16 rebounds. And just overall a very solid production coming in from the starting lineup. They all played 30 minutes, which I really don't think is ideal. But, that's besides the point. Now, the fact that they played these 30 minutes and they still ended up winning against the Celtics. And the Celtics, they also had most of their starters in for a majority of the game. Jason Tatum played 34 minutes in this game. He ended with 24 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists. Derek White played 31 minutes, 23 points, 3 assists, and 2 rebounds. Jaylen Brown, he played 25 minutes, ended with 19 points. And the rest of the Peyton Picard also played pretty well, 15 points in 29 minutes. But not very much production coming in from the bench. Also should be noted, Jason Tatum shot poorly from the field, 5 for 14 from 3, 9 for 22 overall. And Derek White also shot rather poorly, 7 for 20 and 5 for 14 from 3. Jaylen Brown did not hit a three-pointer despite taking 5 of them, and he ended the game with 6 for 15 from the field. Still got 19 points, however. So, overall, solid win for the Raptors. I think this was more of a regular season matchup than a preseason matchup, seeing as how often their starting lineup actually played in this game. But, again, really solid performance coming in from Toronto. Nothing much that needs to be said. Next, the Miami Heat, they ended up playing against the San Antonio Spurs. They ended up winning 120-117. Bam Adebayo ended with 20 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists. 3 steals and 2 blocks. Overall, just an impressive game from Bam. Jimmy Butler, 12 points, only played 24 minutes. Everyone in the starting lineup only played 24 minutes, by the way. And off the bench, Jamie Jaquez Jr. ended with 15 points. They all shot rather efficiently. Jimmy Butler was 4 for 5 from the field. Bam Adebayo was 6 for 10 from the field. And Jaquez Jr. was 5 for 11 from the field. Very impressive and very efficient shooting coming in from the starting lineup. It's really the bench and the rest of the supporting cast that needs to work on their efficiency for the Miami Heat. Now, for the Spurs, Victor only played 17 minutes, which is very ideal. He should not be playing more than 20. And he ended with 8 points, 7 rebounds. Not a very dominant performance from Victor, but again, it was only a couple of minutes. It's not really, you shouldn't really expect much from Victor in a preseason matchup. Chris Paul, he played 25 minutes, ended with 13 points, 5 assists. Jeremy Sochan ended the game with 18 points and 11 rebounds, was the leading scorer for the Spurs, ended with 9 for 13 shooting from the field as well. So overall, solid performance. And Harrison Barnes only finished with 10 points in this matchup. He went 2 for 7 from the field, so not ideal shooting from Harrison Barnes. But again, it's just a preseason matchup, so it's not that big of a deal. Next game on the list, Pelicans, they matched up against the Houston Rockets. The Rockets ended up winning 118-98. And Sengun ended the game with 12 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. Jabari Smith Jr. ended the game with 8 points and 10 rebounds, and along with 5 assists as well. And the leading scorer for the entire Houston Rockets was Jalen Green. He ended with 19 points in 23 minutes, and he shot 7 for 15 from the field. Dylan Brooks had 13 points, the second leading scorer, and was 5 for 7 from the field. So just an overall solid performance from the Houston Rockets in this matchup compared to the Pelicans, who have been struggling rather recently in the preseason. They've only won 1 game in the preseason. Brandon Ingram, he was 7 for 13. Jordan Hawkins was the leading scorer with 20 points. Obviously, Zion didn't play in this game. Makes total sense. He should not be playing in any sort of preseason game at all, because regarding his history with his injuries. And CJ McCollum, 3 for 11, 8 points. He ended 2 for 8 from the field, from the 3, Not all that impressive from him, and that's probably one of the biggest reasons why they ended up losing, that poor shooting. The Thunder ended up destroying the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets haven't won a single preseason game at all. And, I mean, it makes total sense considering how Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, they weren't playing in this game. Honestly, they should not be playing in any preseason matchup at all. Aaron Gordon ended with 11 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. And Julian Strawther ended with 12 points, 4 assists, and 2 rebounds. He was the leading scorer. Actually, no, I lied. Michael Porter Jr. was the leading scorer for the Denver Nuggets. He ended with 15 points and 6 rebounds. Michael just shoot the ball. Porter Jr. ended 1 for 6 from 3. Not that ideal from 3. And the shooting from Trey Alexander was also not ideal. 4 for 12 from the field for 12 points. And overall, the three-point shooting on the Nuggets, they only made 10 three-pointers despite taking 40 of them. So that's 25%, not ideal for the Nuggets and their three-point shooting in the roster. The Thunder, they shot way more efficiently from the field. They shot 50%, and they also shot way more efficiently from 3, 37%. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander ended up playing in this game for some reason. He ended with 19 points in 20 minutes. Chet Holmgren, he also played for some reason. 8 points in 7 rebounds in this game. And Jalen Williams was also playing for some reason. 14 points, 2 rebounds, and 2 assists. Along with Isaiah Hartenstein, who ended with 11 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists. I miss him so much. And off the bench, there's also Isaiah Joe, who ended the game with 14 points and 5 rebounds. And Aaron Wiggins, he ended the game with 10 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, alongside with 2 steals. Overall, just a solid performance coming in from the Thunder. The Nuggets, they really got to work on their three-point shooting, especially if they expect to be a solid team with Jokic and Jamal Murray. Like, really, Jokic, he knows how to make his teammates better. And part of that is setting them up with really good looks at the three-point line. If they are not hitting their shots, that is a big problem. Especially considering how this team didn't really get all that much better in the offseason, losing KCP. Now, next game in the matchup, the Jazz went up against the Kings. The Kings are another team that haven't won a single preseason matchup this season, in this year so far. The Jazz, they're 4-1 in the preseason. I expect that not to translate into the regular season. Keontae George, ended with 24 points. Lauri Markkanen ended with 21 points. Colin Sexton ended with 16 points. And just overall solid production coming in from the starting lineup. Keontae George did shoot 3 for 10 from the three-point line, but still 24 points is 24 points. And Lauri Markkanen shot 4 for 10 from the field, ended with 10 for 10 from the free throw line. They were hitting 90% of their free throws, which is pretty solid. They also hit 40% of their threes, again, pretty solid, and were 53% from the field, very solid as a team. And now the Kings, on the other hand, they played Sabonis for 36 minutes. 36 minutes they played Sabonis. They also played De'Aaron Fox and DeMar for 36 minutes. I don't know why they're playing their starting lineup, and the fact that they ended up losing with these starting lineup playing all these minutes is even more disappointing. Like, De'Aaron Fox, he ended the game with 22 points with 7 rebounds alongside 5 assists as well, but he shot 9 for 22 from the field, meaning that he took 22 shots for 22 points. That is not ideal shooting from De'Aaron Fox, especially being 2 for 9 from 3. And Sabonis ended with 29 points in this preseason matchup, but he took 21 shots, 11 for 21 from the field. Again, 29 points is still 29 points, so very solid production from Sabonis, especially being able to accumulate 17 rebounds and 8 assists along with that. But still, the fact that they ended up losing this matchup and they played their starters, it's not ideal for the Kings. DeMar DeRozan was pitiful shooting. He only took 1 3-pointer. He missed it. And he went 6 for 15 from the field with only 17 points to show for it. Not ideal for DeMar. Definitely not an ideal start for DeMar with the Kings. And let's see. Keegan Murray, he ended up going 8 for 19 from the field, 5 for 11 from 3 with 21 points. The team as a whole shot 26% from 3. And when the Jazz are shooting 40% from 3, you're not going to win. It's just that simple. And they were close. Like they were just 3 points away from being able to win this game. However, Malik Monk was awful. He was 2 for 12 from the field, 1 for 7 from 3 with 5 points. And really, it's just inefficient shooting from the rest of the starting lineup, which is something that you really don't want to see, considering how they had more than 105 shot attempts compared to the Jazz, who only had 71 shot attempts. It's like, how do you lose that? You had so many more possessions than the Jazz. It's really just your awful shooting that puts you in a bind. Like, that's going to be a problem. If the team can't figure out their shooting woes, that's going to be a problem, especially considering how 3 of their best players rely on mid-range shots. That is not a very efficient system to run. I'm sorry to say this. That is a high-risk, low-reward kind of shot. You need to take a lot more 3-pointers. And I feel like the lack of 3-point attempts is going to be something that hurts this team in the long run, especially if they cannot be efficient from inside the arc, which is what is considered to be some of their more efficient shots. But that's all that I really have to say in regards to the preseason. Those are all the games that went down. Now, today, the preseason matchups, they're going to be the 76ers going up against the Nets, Pistons are going up against the Cavs, Heat are going up against the Hawks, Timberwolves are going up against the Bulls, and the Trailblazers are going up against a team named Ratio Farm. Forgive me if I messed up that. Ratio Farm. Forgive me if I messed up that last that team name, because I mean it's a team that's outside of the NBA. So realistically, the Portland Trailblazers should easily win this. If they don't, that's a problem. That's a very big problem if they don't. But, those are all the preseason matchups that are going down today. Be sure to tune into those if you're interested. And that's all that I have for the show. Thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. As usual, we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, or something that you've just been dying to share. We're all ears. If you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. Super Chat's not really your thing. That's okay. You can always use the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment as well, gsmcpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. Really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. That's all that I have for you today on this podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.